So, Mike is a Marine Corps major, entrepreneur, and Harvard Business School graduate. After 14 years in the Marines, he founded two robotic companies and created pathways for veterans into startup and technology careers. His latest company, Nation Future Industries, builds humanoid robots for the United States Department of War and other industrial applications. Disclaimer. Any of the guidance offered by the podcast host, myself, or the podcast guests is our own guidance. We are not liable for any of the actions the podcast listener decides to do. Welcome to the show today, Mike. Glad to have you on.
Great. Thanks so much, Johnny.
Thanks. I was just saying before the show, Mike's got a big bookshelf as well. So it's been a big reader like myself. So I'm sure I have a lot to talk about today. So yeah, Mike, I know love to start with your book. I know that's coming out in August, that anger is the answer. How for you can anger be useful? Because I know people have different views on it. They're like, oh, anger's not a good thing to do. And then other people, I can see them channeling a lot of energy into like making things happen. So yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about that book title and the idea from you.
You know, anger's just been interesting to me throughout my time in the Marine Corps, really, of seeing what it is that they bring out of, they bring in any normal kind of civilian. I was born in Ohio, very suburban town, very normal town. My dad was a house painter, my mom was a teacher. And, I'm just a very normal kid. The Marine Corps has to bring out of you this edge that's going to allow you to stand in front of, a lot of troops that are following you. Many times, when I was 21, I had, some 40-year-old men that had been on many deployments, all reporting to me, right? So you have to have some kind of push, some kind of aggression, some kind of competence to be able to pull that off without looking like, kind of the brat whiz kid or something like that. And so it's become really fascinating to me to see what changes throughout Marines. And it's really this development of anger. Instead of making it something that is destructive in life or where you're just, going off the rails at everything, to actually be able to put that into building things, to be able to move conversations forward, be able to push back on boundaries. That really just a lot of different uses that come out in it that I think is looked over in modern society.
It sounds, is it a book that's written for someone outside of the Marines as well?
Yeah, the whole idea was really, on somebody on a transcontinental flight in the US, right? The idea of I fly a lot from California to DC, and I pick up books a lot of the time and we'll read a book, across the country. And I wanted to do something that you could read the entire book during that time and leave with a new framework and lens as if you'd been in the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the hope of the book, is that somebody leaves, and those books that just plant a seed. And you start, you get off the plane and then you start going, I'm just seeing that a little bit different. Well, that was interesting. I saw that a little bit different, and it grows on itself, and you're kind of able to fill in the rest through your experience.
I've got you. Yeah, it sounds, like you pulled some kind of framework from your experience just for maybe the everyday man potentially.
Well, yeah, because it's so interesting because, I think a lot of times we try to eradicate things that are essential to human nature these days. We try to get rid of bullying, we try to get rid of gossip, we try to get rid of anger. And yet all of these things have been present in human beings in every society at every time throughout history. So they're really staples of what we are. And so instead of trying to get rid of them or suppress them and medicate them away, the idea is, what are they there for in the first place? Why was that good for us as human beings? And I think that looking at why anger might be good is similar to looking at why pain might be good, right? If you couldn't feel any pain in your body, you break your leg and you'd keep walking, right? You wouldn't know to go get anything checked out to fix anything. Anger is like that, but it's about crossing boundaries. It's when somebody's going to take advantage of you, when they're going to be unfair, when you're just not being treated right. Anger is that pain, so it's an essential sensor in your life that you really want to be turned on and tuned into.
What kind of came up for me, I was just thinking is, there's sometimes a lot of apathy in the world as well. Sometimes people go into those states when we're like really down. For me, I know when I've been in those tough states, although I don't want to be like, angry like my whole life, I want to experience the joy and stuff, but actually that for me can be quite a useful emotion to get things kicking off, and then, start building that resilience back to like setbacks rather than kind of being too long in apathy as well. That's what I've
Yeah,
experienced.
there are a lot of times I see this in employees a lot, and this is something that I'll have to work with people on, is that I see them kind of, quiet quitting in their mind, right? They feel that they've been burned too many times by the company, by me, by just, the team not going their direction, that instead they go, well, fine, you don't want to hear my ideas, then I won't say any of my ideas. And they disengage and they exit in their head. But really that's, it's on all of us individually to engage. And a lot of times engagement, when you think that something is unfair or that things aren't going in the right direction, anger is the right way to get that out, right? You don't need to be rage filled and screaming at somebody to do it. But you do need to continue to speak your mind. That's what your company, wants out of you. That's what your family wants out of you. That's what your friends want out of you. You've got to stay engaged instead of quietly making these deals in your head to shut people off. And, oh, well, that person doesn't even know, but when they talk to me that way, I'm never going to speak to them again, or I'm never going to let them on the inner circle again. That's not, that's not the richest behavior.
I've got you. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I know so is that your first book, or has there been other ones?
No, yeah, this is the first, and if
Exciting.
my wife has her way, the only. This one took me a very long time to write.
A lot of time away to really
Yes.
focus. That's awesome. Now, I'd like to hear a little bit about the work you're doing with like robots as well. Like, I know that's something you've been creating. What kind of drove you onto that?
It was interesting because coming out of the Marine Corps was a big challenge. And I think that, when I really came out of the Marine Corps, I had gotten used to being this sort of leader and commander there that they train you to be. But it makes it very hard for you to go into a role where you're working for somebody else. And I think that was very tough for employers to kind of see where I would fit in. I didn't have a very definable skill set, but had a lot of broad traits and potentialities that they thought those looked good. Uh, and so, once I just couldn't find a job coming out, I figured out that I had to go back to school, and that was where I went to Harvard. And as soon as I got into Harvard, the opportunities were just kind of, rampant and interesting, and there were a million different ways to go. And that was where I met these great roboticists, Travis Dial and Eric Schlentz, and they really knew what they were doing on the technology side and wanted me to help with, building the business and leading the team and everything.
Oh wow, it's a lot of that must be a lot of creativity and a lot of brainstorming in that kind of area with robots. I can only imagine.
It's funny, I think a lot of it ends up being problem solving. And this, to me, that's what a startup really is setting what you think the standard of excellence is. And, at that time, we wanted to be a multi-billion dollar company. At Foundation, my current company, we want to be a $1 trillion company. And so when you have that mindset of this is a $1 trillion company, you're upset about everything you look at, right? You can be happy about the progress you've made, but you're also looking at everything and going, that's not part of a $1 trillion company. That's not part of it. Like, how do we get there? We need to get the contracts up. We need to get investments up. We need to get our compute better. We need to get our automation faster. We need to, you're looking at everything like a messy room that needs to be cleaned up. And I think that's a great way to be driven, is to be trying to reach that internal standard. Because when your bar is on the floor, it's very easy to just step over it, right? If you go to your company and you go, this is good, and you're always reframing it in your mind to be, I think we're really good. I think we're better than the competition. I think that's where you stop growing, right? It's when you look at it and you go, everything here could be a little bit better. How can I make it a little bit better today? That's when you're really able to build things.
It's fascinating. So is that kind of been something you've adopted through life generally, like thinking about the next step or like the next person you want to be, and moving with that, like you use the example there, we're $1 trillion company in my mind. It's like, where are we not meeting that standard? Has that been something through your life you've adopted?
Yeah, I think it's almost, and this is kind of the anger point, is is really, it's a disgust with not being that,
Mm.
right? I'm ashamed of the parts that aren't that. And so when I'm looking around, I'm not looking through a lens of gratitude all day and going, isn't this just so great? I get to work with robots and I get to, no, I'm looking at it and going, that we should be embarrassed of that. We shouldn't be putting that out. Why are we putting that out? How can we make that better so that we're not so embarrassed? How can we make this faster? When a customer asks a question about what it can do, and I go, it should be able to do that. They're right. We need to be able to go make that. I think when you lean into the shame that you have of yourself instead of trying to, reframe it away, that's a real unlock because you start to recognize, yeah, the parts that I don't like about myself, a lot of them are not good parts. And fortunately, there's something that you can do about them.
That's Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective. I really enjoy this because I know those views out there as well where people are like, you got to love all the parts of yourself, but this is going for a higher standard and knowing there is a better part, like there's a better level of you, and you're always trying to do that. It sounds like.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting. Aristotle was first to put this on my radar in the Ethics. He
Good old
says that
Aristotle.
shame is almost a virtue. And it is. It's because you're recognizing something that's deficient. So there are all kinds of parts of myself that I don't like. There are parts of myself that I don't like as a leader. There are parts of myself that I don't like as a dad, as a husband, and all of those things. When I see myself doing them, when I experience them, I'm sickened by myself. And so instead of trying to go, that's okay. I was in a bad mood this morning. I was a little short with the kids. That's okay. Instead of brushing it off, I go, no, I want to feel, I want to do better so that I feel better. So now next time, I used to do that with the kids. So my kids are all really close in age, right? I've got they're at the year, they're 7, 8, and 9 years old. But, when they were really young, when they were 1, 2, and 3, they'd be hanging all over me. I'd have one on the chest. I'd have two of them like running around, one of them getting hurt. You'd have all these things. And sometimes I'd be getting in a bad mood. So I would just turn on a video on my phone and I would start, videoing them. But the video wasn't really to capture them or their memories. It was to hold myself accountable as a dad of the way that I was talking to them and the way that I was acting. Because I knew I was in such a sour mood that if I had the camera on, I wasn't going to be like that. And so I keep it on. So I have I have a bunch of videos of 40 minutes, an hour long, of me at a baseball game or wherever with the kids, just videoing because I wanted to be the best dad that day. And so instead of telling myself it was all okay, I wanted to hold myself accountable and show myself, yeah, if you're gonna be bad, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna rewatch it and feel bad about it again. So, be good.
I like that technique, observing and correcting yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It's the same thing that I would do, when I was practicing to give briefs to generals.
Mm.
All the first times that we would have to, I was a sniper leader, and you would have to do these elaborate plans that they'd be, 120 slides. You'd have 20 slides that you'd present, but then you had to have all the contingencies. So that when the commander said, well, what if somebody finds you in your hide on day 2? You've got to have it all ready of prepared. Here's where we egress. Here's where we do, here's exactly what we do. And I would just practice these things over and over again. I had a, camera with my computer and would just practice my brief for hours. I would sit there and then I'd rewatch myself and I'd go, it doesn't sound quite right. I'd replay it back. It's those kinds of hours when you're looking at yourself objectively. When you write something down, you get a thought out of your head and then you can judge the thought because it's not you anymore. Right? All those things of making yourself easier to objectify. I think it makes it very easy to be ashamed and to fix things.
It sounds like almost having hard conversations with yourself and being very brutally honest, which I know a lot of us avoid. I've definitely been guilty of it, having that level of honesty in myself. And I guess you had to have a lot of hard conversations with people in your time in the Marines as well.
Yeah, why? I think that hard conversations, the value of your conversations is a reflection of the hard conversations you're willing to have. And that's why doing things like getting yourself on video of sitting down and writing things out. What makes it so nice is that as soon as, I could be on the loop, right? I can wake myself up at 3 a.m. and I can be so angry about something. This guy screwed me. This guy screwed me. This guy screwed me. And then as soon as I sit down and type that sentence out, this guy screwed me, then it's out there and I go, well, he didn't really screw me. He was acting in his best interest. And to be fair, I did this. But he still shouldn't have done. there's an answer to it. You can actually move forward in these things as soon as you get them out of yourself, because otherwise it's not a conversation that I have in my head, right? It's a kind of loop. It's a kind of vibe and dream that comes out, and when it turns negative, you just kind of suffer through it on loop, just playing back over and over again. So it's really about finding that traction to be able to move your way out.
Seeing it on paper, writing it down sounds like it's been a big step for you. Um,
Oh yeah, I mean, I've always been a writer. I've always kept journals. I've just always used it as a tool. And how many times have I woken up early in the morning and just written down what could I be doing better, right? What advice do I have for myself?
mm,
Because we all have advice for everybody else in our life. It's easy if somebody came over to you right now and they said, Johnny, tell me everything that I'm doing wrong. You'd be like, let me pull out the list. I'm glad you asked. Right? It's easy to see in other people, but to ourselves, we make excuses for them and we go, they don't really understand. It's like that because of this. But when you can be objective with yourself like that and really give yourself advice, it's amazing if you're willing to take it that you can change your whole life that way. And so I did that. I was at a party and a guy was asking me all about, oh, should I go into consulting or should I go into this movie company? And I had a whole talk with him. I talked to him for an hour. I mean, we really were side in the party, talked for a very long time through it. I was telling him the consulting is really not the way in this. And at the end, he went, I think I'm going to go consulting. And and I thought, what the hell did I just do for an hour? Of here, I used all of my experience, my intelligence. I spent all of that to tell this guy some advice that he wasn't even going to take. And I thought, well, okay, I'm going to tell myself advice then, and I'm going to take it, and I'm gonna use all that same experience and intelligence, but I'm gonna take that. And I think that's a real power to have in the world when you can actually give yourself advice and take it, and it sort of forms this amazing relationship with you and yourself, you as boss and you as employee, you as master and you as servant. It's really interesting when you can start to build a good relationship there instead of being the one that's always falling short of promises.
mm. Yeah, have almost like coaching yourself through things. It sounds like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's a funny thing throughout all these books is nobody who's ever seriously looked at the soul or just at the human experience has said that we're one thing. You really can't find a serious person that's done it. They've almost always broken us into either two or three parts. Some have broken us into many parts. But that is the case that you have executive function that is this, here's what I'm going to do. It's the part of us that sets New Year's resolutions and says, this is the kind of person that I'm going to be. And then you have the other person that has to follow through on that. And, too often we let that executive part act tyrannically. And, so we say we're going to do a gym membership and then we just force our body and our laziness, for the first 14 days of January every year to drag into the gym. And by that 15th day, you go, I've had enough of this. I quit. Right? And you're out. So, but when you can figure out a better relationship between those two parts, when you can have it be more of a parent to a child, a professor to a scholar, when you can have that kind of relationship between those two parts, that's when you can really start to build things because you can actually start to make promises and then keep them. And that's, to me, that's what flourishing is. That's what happiness is.
Yeah, I like the analogies of parent to a child, a professor to a scholar that you use there as well. Having that kind of narrative of yourself to get something that fits for you, that works for you, not just like, right, I'm going to slog it out for like a month in the gym, even though I hate it, and these 2 hours of workouts a day when I've not done anything for 6 months. Yeah,
Yes. Well, that's the funny thing. We treat ourselves worse than we treat anybody else in our lives.
mm,
There's no way that we would treat a friend in that same way of just, you're too fat. You're gonna stop eating candy. Anytime you put candy near your mouth, I'm gonna smack it out of your mouth. But that's the kind of stuff that we do to ourselves.
mm,
Is we go, there's no give, there's no degrees to this, there's no shades of gray. You're gonna do it my way. That's how things are going to go. And then it's no surprise that we don't live up to them because we set these kind of impossible standards. I see people goal setting constantly, and it's they're just putting unrealistic goals that they're going to hold themselves to. They're essentially finding a part of their personality that they don't like, and they're saying, I'm never going to give into that part of my personality again. And that's not really allowing for a Congress, right? That's not allowing for a parliament of your soul. That's not allowing for anybody to speak out the different parts. But the part of you that wants to eat ice cream late at night, the part of you that wants to take a day off from work, that part needs to have a voice. That doesn't. There are a lot of people that give into that voice too often, but more often it's not that people are just saying I'm gonna live that way and making a deliberate choice. They're just so used to being overrun, just the same as you see a bratty kid just totally overrunning their parent, right? Screaming in their ear. They're sitting and having dinner, going, "Please, I told you," and the kid just keeps screaming at him, hitting him with a plastic bat, whatever. That's how most people are running their lives, is just letting that lazy, hungry, greedy part of themselves just run roughshod over their executive function, while their executive function tries to answer back tyrannically, like, you're going to be sorry, but it never is.
Yeah. So it's about that quality of narrative you have with yourself and those conversations. Ultimately, it sounds like. What is, because we talk about on this podcast a lot, what is, like, we've talked about a few things today, but what is self-love for you? How's, like, the best act someone can give themselves for self-love?
Well, what's so great is that when you really give yourself the ability to feel shame, that's where you can also feel real pride, right? That's the other side of that coin, is that, when you're not just looking at everything you do and say, I should be happy with that for whatever reason, and yeah, I did bad on that presentation, but at least I gave the presentation. When you're in that mindset, I think that it's hard to really be proud of yourself when you do something right. But, for me, I mean, I'm a big binge eater. I love to eat junk food at night. It's been a big issue throughout my life, is that I just love, if there's candy, if there's cookies, if there's whatever around, I'll just go nuts on them. But because I'm willing to really feel the shame of that and go, I hate that I do that. I hate that it wrecks my sleep. I hate, so many things about it. It makes me really proud of myself when I can go to bed without doing that, right? When I find myself just doing the right thing, all of a sudden I have this great pride, and I go, I really love myself for that. I really love that I can do that. And I think it's an earned love. You almost don't want to love yourself unconditionally. That's you want to find this way to go, no, there are conditions on myself, there are conditions in which I'm just going to be ashamed and disgusted with myself, and I need to get back to that place where I am proud of myself. But then as you do that, I think that's where you can really be happy. That's where you can be calm, where you can be not stressed, is I actually did the right thing.
Doing the right thing for yourself is a key one.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I think that a lot of times I'll listen. I've read a bunch of self-help books. I've read a bunch of, listened to a bunch of Tony Robbins, that kind of thing. And a lot of times people get in this kind of mindset where they think, if I can just fix the way that I'm thinking about what I'm doing, that's what I need to do, because I'll never be good enough. So I need to, find a way to be happy with being bad enough. But it's really interesting because, my dad, he always had a different route for that. He would say GTAL, get to a list, and to him, if you're sitting there and feeling that stress and that fog and I don't know what to do, that's not a time for a bubble bath. That's not a time, to go for a run, or or for self-care. Oh, I just need a night to watch movies. That's time to get to a list. Write down all the things that are on your mind, all the things that aren't what they should be. And as you do that, start doing them. And when you feel yourself crossing those off, that's what's going to give you the relief. And it's a lot of times people don't go, they don't go to the actual world to fix their inner problems. They think that they need, deep breathing and meditation techniques, when what they really need is action.
I can relate to that. Like years back, being in a career that's sort of very fast paced. That's learning these personal growth things. It's like, right, I'm going to do some breath work or meditation, but do you know what felt the best? Whereas when I actually did the hard thing,
Yes.
not the meditation and breath work, I think are really useful and I love them. But when you need to do the hard thing, for me, it was doing the hard thing gives you the best feeling.
Yes. And that's, I mean, I've had Marines that I'll see, and I'll be telling them, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I'll see them doing something like taking a breath. And I'm like, you got to get that out of here. And I know that's you want mindfulness. I'll do all that kind of stuff at different times. But when I'm like, no, action right now is what you need to do. You're deficient in your work. If you're a kid and you feel stressed about your final coming up because you don't know any of the material, the answer is not to take deep breaths to get through it. The answer is to study, right? And when you actually conquer that knowledge and when you're confident, all of a sudden you'll be shocked. All of your worries go away when you get good at something. A lot of life is like that, and there aren't too many people that are saying it these days.
It's like when I've worked in sales, it's like the amount of breathing, journaling, or breath work is going to get you better at or doing the sales calls. What gets you doing
Yes.
the sales calls is doing the sales calls. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And I've done this for a long time. I keep a big sketch pad on my desk, and each day I'll write out 10 things I don't want to do today. So that's the name of the list. I write 10 things I don't want to do today, and then I'll write, May 5th, whatever the date is. And I'll just write them out. And then I'll start doing them. And I don't do all 10. They could be simple things. Fix a doorknob on in my kid's door, right? That could be one of them. Another one could be develop a proposal for, that's going to take me hours. But whatever they are, I just put down whatever it is that's giving me any psychological block.
Mm.
Anything that isn't the way that it should be, that I know the ball is in my court, that I don't want to do, but I know that I should do. And it's amazing. You knock out 6 or 7 of those. I won't normally do the full 10, but you do 6 or 7, and all of a sudden that executive function of yours, which has quietly quit because it knows that you're a terrible employee, you're not going to do anything that it says anyway, right? As soon as you do 6 or 7, you start to wake up on that executive function. And it goes, now that I know that you'll actually do stuff, I'm going to reward you with some good ideas.
Mm.
And it's amazing how your day. I go through this every day. It's like 51st dates or something. Or Groundhog Day. I wake up every morning and I'm lazy, no good, and don't want to do anything with my life again. That's the start of the morning. I'm not a morning person. And through starting to do 10 things that I don't want to do, I suddenly have this realization that I go, oh, now I could do this and I could do that. And my mind's firing on all cylinders, and I do work that I never planned to do that day, but that I'm so proud of. And I go, who knew the day was going to take us in that direction? And then I'm so proud, and I resolve not to do it the next day, and then I wake up and start again.
Mm. I love that. Love that approach. Like you talked about doing the things you don't want to do, or just like taking on those things outside of that. I'm curious, is there any techniques or things you prefer to sort of unwind or de-stress from your days? I'd love to hear it from someone who's been in the Marines as well. What it is for you?
I picked up a good one from JFK actually, which was different state changes. He would do things like go sailing, or he even talked about just taking a shower, taking a bath as a state change for your body.
Mm.
And there's this great. I can never remember who it is. I think it's probably Montaigne, but one of these books has a great thing where it says, you should rest. When you're tired from intellectual work, you should rest by doing physical work, and when you're tired from physical work, you should do intellectual work. And to me, that's been a huge help to me. Is that when you're just working, you're feeling kind of swamped by everything and thinking, oh man, you're just too deep in the rabbit hole, too many places, and the things aren't really moving. That's a great time, for me. Got a pool to go for a swim, to go for a hike, to go for a run, to go do something physical, to go lift weights. And then as soon as I'm doing those and I get tired of doing those, I come back in and I've got it all free again. And you can really bounce back and forth between those two things all day. And any day that I do that, it's going to be a good day because you really see that you're like, I'm so happy to be outside. I'm so happy to go for a run and work my legs or work my arms, whatever it is. Because you're like, I was in that kind of fog, and then you get to come back and you've got that strong mental energy. But that is, any kind of state change with that, getting to the beach, going for a hike. People do this with cold plunges, I think a lot. But that's the basic idea is just change the state and your animal kind of wakes up and knows that it needs to do something different.
Mixing between physical and intellectual tasks. That's a good approach. Yeah, after a nice run or workout, sometimes it's a lot. Yeah, can relate to finding it a lot more easy to focus. Yeah, Mike, I'd love to hear as we kind of like wrap up today. Where is the best place for the listener to find you in terms of your new book that's coming out, Anger is the Answer, or any of your other work. Um, and out of anything we've shared today or anything else you'd like to add, is there anything else you'd like to leave us with today?
Yeah, so official Mike LeBlanc.com. So official Mike LeBlanc is just LEBLANC.com. That has a lot about my book. That has all the links to my robots. That has, which have all kinds of interesting things that we didn't go into, of selling into defense and cool things that we do with them. But really, yeah, the last thing that I'd leave listeners with is really just trying to think, how do they treat themselves? And trying to think, do I want to be the nice parent who doesn't get results out of my inner child, right? And my inner child is just beating the crap out of me. Or do I want to be a disciplined parent who loves the child but is making sure to help them develop and grow? Because I think when you switch into that mindset, it's really incredible when you do that, day after day, just of holding yourself to a standard just like you would hold your kid. Life can get better much faster than people realize.
Holding your own inner child to a standard.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of having an inner brat.
Yeah, running rings around you that you touched on today. That's awesome. Mike, thank you so much for everything you've touched on today. I'm excited for when your book comes out, and I know it's going to impact a lot of lives. So thank you for everything you've shared today. Mike's links are in the show notes below to get to his official site, his official page, and that link to everything, you can find that below. So once again, Mike, a massive thank you for coming on today.
Thanks a lot, Johnny. Great talking to you.
Absolutely. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.